Hello, and welcome to another week of game development. At the end of last month's video, I talked about redoing the tiles again, and I have done that. So now it creates this thing here. Wow, I lost my train of thought very quickly there. So before I had this system here with this stuff, but now the new one, it has materials displaying properly. That was the main thing that caused issues when trying to make this. I'll demonstrate what I can do now. So if I come in here, I can make a floor prefab and ignore that message. That's just something that I'm not checking whether it's null or not. So here we go. We create a new tile. Keep it at 0. Let's make it walkable. Default icon's fine. Let's give it, let's say, a purple tint for the icon. And the tile set, I need to remove the old ones, but the one I want is plain tile. And then it gives the option for materials. So I can do that, but if I hit this checkbox here, directional, and then hit update, it makes a new array of length 4. And I can just come in here, assign these. West. I haven't actually tested the directions, so that's something that I'm going to be doing now. If I come in here, and where is it? Directional testing. There we go. And we come to the game and play, and we change the floor type to directions as it's popped up here, and we place it. You can see it's now this directional thing. Now, this is the bit I haven't checked. If I press R, it should rotate it. Ah, okay. So that works. But when it updates the surrounding tiles, it's still taking that rotation. So that is a slight issue. But it is nice to know that rotation works. And I did try out changing materials. So this is just one with a different border. And I did actually add the ability to choose what materials another one can connect to. So as you can see, these are connecting to each other, even though they are different tile types. So if I can show you that by going, so if I put, let's just put let's connect to dirt for some reason. So now, if I play, I don't remember, that was stone floor, right? If I just place some stone floor tiles here, now I'll place grass so you can see that we get this border here and it doesn't connect with it. Whereas now if I place dirt, it connects. So that gives me a lot more freedom. And if the user wants to do some sort of pattern on the floor, they can do that and it doesn't necessarily cause these borders. So yeah, I'm very happy with the progress I've made there. And I'll just try and sort out that updating the directions thing quickly before we move on. Yep, okay, I'll do that now then. If I rotate, ta-da, it works. And if we drop the tile down further, it still works. So yeah, I do know what I want to do next, but before that, the small thing I want to do is improve the visual indication of placing a tile, because you have no way to know what rotation there is at the moment. Alright then, here's the solution I've ended up coming up with. If I take the directional test again, as you can see, I ended up just going with the arrow. I did try doing the texture preview, it was just getting it was overcomplicating things, and this is just easier, especially when I already have this floor type preview here, which apparently I still have issues with the UI to work out, tooltip even. So all I'm doing now is displaying the arrow, and when you rotate, it also rotates the texture. And now as I said, I know what I want to do next, and it's something that's been neglected, and that is to update the way the walls work. Now, I've spent all this time tweaking and updating the floors, and I haven't touched the walls in a long time. I'm not doing a lot of tweaks, to be honest. The main thing I'm going to do is I'm making 3 different types. So there's the base one, there's a middle one, and then there'll be a top one. Okay, that wasn't too bad. It took a while, but after doing the floor tiles, it was a lot simpler to do because I didn't have to work out so many things. This is how it works now. You make this wall set like you do the tiles. This is just the base models, and there's 4 varieties. I'll go into that in a minute. And then you make a prefab of the style you want with the name, the icon, the cost, and then you select the wall set and you choose the materials. So it's the same type of thing as the floors. So I can give you a little demonstration. So if I change the wall type to this UV one, it'll show you how they're laid out. So there's 3 types. The orange, there's 4, but so there's the orange, and that's at the bottom. There's the green, that's the middle, and then the blue, which is the top. And that also includes this edge strip here. That's included in the UV. It's one single texture, and then the different models are just bound to a different type. Then we have the edge case of if there's one tile, it is half of the top and half of the bottom. So it just combines the top and the bottom there, because I figured that's where you would put the decoration. Like if there's a different design at the top, different at the bottom, that then shows there. I'll show you. I did make a plank texture, and I added a basic texture. Well, I reused an old texture for a stone wall. So that's what it looks like with these. And I think even though this is thrown together pretty quickly, it turned out quite well. I'll definitely redo the walls. As you can see, the seams here are awkward, and it just looks a bit weird. But I'll probably keep the 4 if I'm honest. These planks, you can rotate these. And then obviously, now with the system, I can make different varieties. So I could do a corner one where they connect better. I could do a T-junction as well. So that all blends together. And then rather than trying to do some clever things with connecting textures and such, I'll just have it so the user just chooses. Hello, and welcome to another week of game development. At the end of last week, I talked about improving the way the walls and tiles are selected. But while I was trying to do that, I had a lot of issues deciding what tiles should be replaced and what walls should be replaced. And in the end, I decided that it made more sense to split the systems up. So what I've got now is you pick the depth, and it will place a default tile type. So even if I come in here and change the wall type to stone wall and place, it stays as this. So this will be like the terrain editing mode where it just edits how deep everything is. And then I've just got a temporary option here, which is change terrain. If I uncheck this, now if I pick a floor type, all it does is it replaces existing floor tiles. So even if I change this depth, it doesn't. It's sort of like painting. And then if I come down here, I can set it to change walls. I've just got these as basic options. So now if I click on a wall tile, it changes it. And then if I hold shift and click at any point on that vertical, it will replace all of them. So I'm going to work out a better way to represent this with the UI. Because at the moment we've got floor type, wall type. So I might do like a third button that's for terrain editing, and then it just switches between them. I'm not sure. I'll think about it and try and work out where this error is coming from. Let me get on with that. Okay, so this is a solution I came up with. Now you just choose what type you want, and then it starts off, select the terrain, and it edits it, and then use a floor type. Let's do grass, and that then sets it to override, and then you can do walls and set the wall type. Alright, then I've now got that functioning to a level I'm pretty happy with. So if we make a box here, then if we change to wall selection, you'll see the grid goes away. Then if we hover over the wall, we get a new thing, and then if we drag and select, it places the wall. Now, as you might have seen, the color itself is different to this box select for the floor. And the reason for that is this is using a game object with a shader on it, whereas the wall one, this is just using an image and then changing the width. And the reason that this is different is because if I go back to terrain and I change that to 2 and then raise up some terrain here, probably a bit hard to show. So if I now go onto the wall, if I click here, drag, that is an error. Well, that was strange because I'm sure that was working earlier. But as I was trying to say, the reason I'm using an image rather than the shader is because the floor you override at all depths is the way it's set up, but I didn't want that for the walls. So what happens is if I try and drag over here, it doesn't work. If I keep it on the same plane, then it does update. As you'll see from not only having these ugly textures around, but also these not really working properly, and all these temporary icons apart from maybe this one. These textures need some work, so I think what I'm going to do to end this week off is I'm going to go through some of these textures and try and make them a bit more polished, because this is the closest thing to polished, and this is just reused from the old system and adapted, hence why this looks so ugly. Alright then, I've made those changes, and now have some better textures. So instead of the UVs, it's now a basic stone texture. And this is, I think it's okay. Obviously there's room for improvement, but it's definitely good enough for the time being. And then if we click on the floors, you'll see the stone floor. I haven't updated that because I need to UV map everything in that, so there's no actual textures on it at the moment. We've got grass, which is alright as well. This one definitely needs updating though. You can see there's some patterning in it. Just doesn't look great, so this is probably first on the list to redo at some point. And then dirt. It also has a pattern in it, but it's not quite as bad, I don't think. And then these haven't been changed. I've just made sure they've got the proper icons now. Back to stone. And then walls. The stone wall, obviously, the UV wall is just the testing, and then lastly we have the bricks, which I'm pretty happy with. I didn't end up putting any noise. You usually put a bit of noise on, well, but I didn't do that in the end. Do that at some point. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. It just looks a lot better now. We don't have those horrible UVs sitting around, and this is closer to what you'd actually use. And the major thing though was if I go in here and go into box select, if I try and change the styles, that works fine, but it doesn't actually let me go over this edge here, which is an issue that existed before. I think that's a good feature to have. Ah, that is something I hadn't thought about. I'll have to make a directional texture for the stone probably to alleviate this issue. I think that's why I'm going to leave it this week. We didn't get all that much done from the outside, but it was surprisingly complicated to get this new wall system implemented because I had to write a new detection system. I also took the time to improve the box selection, as you may have seen in the past. It was very awkward to try and select new tiles and it wasn't following properly. And the main reason for that is I was just doing a flat plane at a height of 0 and then working out the tile coordinate from there. Whereas now I'm actually getting the raycast intersection at a floor tile, and if it doesn't hit floor tile and it hits a wall, it checks which tile the wall's connected to and it gets that. And then I already had the detection in for the blank terrain. Hello and welcome to another week of game development. Now this week I thought I'd like to add some objectives to the game because right now it's just a sandbox where you design whatever you want and then place it, but that's only going to entertain people for so long. It's not a particularly compelling idea for a game. I was thinking about what the goal of the game is going to be, and basically I thought about it as what I want is the player to design a good dungeon, and to compel the player to do that we need to give them reasons to do that. So obviously that's going to be tied to adventurers coming into the dungeon. And what that means is that we need to give them a reason to have adventurers in the dungeon. Now, previously, I was going to use mana generators to give the player the resources that they would need to build things and change the terrain. But thinking about it, I think what I'm actually going to do is make it so as adventures are in the dungeon, they passively give you mana. So in effect, the adventures serve as the mana generators. And then I could do things maybe that when they kill mobs, that generates mana, or I don't know, when they die, that generates mana. But I'd also like to put in a penalty for killing adventurers that maybe there's like a difficulty rating or something. I don't know, that there's some ideas I have around that come in later, but I think to start off with, I'm gonna replace these mana generators producing stuff and make it passive. Okay, I have implemented that. So if we now come and play entrance down, you'll see when it spawns a mob, you can see the mana ticks up, and then I just kill the mob, and it stops ticking up. So I can set the amount that each mobs gives. It's just a fixed amount at the moment. I think I will do some scaling in the future where when a adventure is generated, it will have a random level, and then that level will add a multiplier on something. But yeah, I'm happy with that because now there's a reason to keep players in the adventurers in the dungeon. What I'm going to do next though is I'm going to get rid of this total mana count because it's not being used for anything at the moment, and I think I'll keep it uncapped at the minute. I don't see a particular need to have it capped unless there's some exploit that I find. So I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to replace it with a mana per second count. Right then, as you can see, I have added what the per second indicator. It's down as it can be spawning because I still haven't changed the spawn time for some reason. But I put it in a little box. I need to pad the left and right a little more. As you can see, now it says +5 per second, and goes back to 0. Next thing to do, aside from adding a little bit of padding, I think it makes sense to add some sort of indication of the cost of these, because currently there isn't one, so you'd have to just try and place one and see if it says you can place it or not. Okay, that wasn't too bad. I've just got a number here for the cost with just a square behind it to add some contrast, because if we go over to these which don't have an icon, it just makes it a bit more readable. Probably be some playing around with stuff like that, because I mean, I shouldn't keep the UI grey, because it's grey on grey at the moment, which is not particularly enticing, so at some point I'll look into changing the colours and things. It's definitely UI work that needs to be done anyway, so when I get around to that, I'll probably change the colours then, maybe. But the next job, I think what I want to do is make the what are they called? Adventurers leave the dungeon if they're not entertained enough, maybe. I won't put any of the actual entertainment features in at the moment. I think I'll just have a simple counter that if they don't find anything to do, it decreases some sort of satisfaction number. And then if that hits 0, they'll then leave. Okay, I ended up doing that, but in a fairly simple way. So it spawns, you can sort of see it rotating, but not really. And then if it doesn't find anything, it goes away. The reason I didn't do any sort of countdown or anything is because it's sort of messy the way the mob logic's working at the moment. Like different systems are doing different things. So I probably need to make some sort of flowchart for the actual behaviors themselves. Yeah. So I think the last thing I'm going to do this week is I'm going to make this counter more gradual, so rather than just going 5 to 0, I'm going to try and make it so it counts up a bit, so it's not as jarring. That's the plan at least. Let me give that a go. Okay, here's what I came up with. So now when it spawns, you see we get a green text to show it's increasing. And it deleted itself too quickly, so let me just come over here and I can manually set a mana rate. Let's do 15. It picks up. Probably should make it tick up faster. It might be a bit confusing. And then if I want to do a negative mana rate, so let's do negative 100, it'll go red. So yeah, not the craziest thing, but I thought it was something good to have. Spawns, it ticks up 5 per second, and then once it gets rid of itself, it adds an extra 100. So something I'd like to add is just a little display underneath that shows when fixed amounts are added, and then if you when they die adds a fixed, and when you buy something it subtracts a fixed, and it just gives you a little display. Make it easy to see what's happening, but that's something I'm not going to do now. Hello and welcome to another week of game development. Although this week it's going to be a bit different because I haven't actually done any work on the game. What I've done instead is I took some time to make this flowchart about how the mobs should behave. So I was doing some thinking, and the core of the gameplay is derived from the behavior of the mobs. So I really needed to think about how the system was going to work properly. So I've made this diagram. There's definitely room for improvement. This should be a very good starting off point. So if we start over here, a mob will spawn. It'll then idle for a certain amount of time. Although when it first spawns, it could probably skip this and go straight to this scan, which I'm treating as checking in front of it with the view frustrum. Then if it finds a point of interest here, it will see if there's an attack target. If there isn't, it will see if it's at its target destination. If it is, it loots it. When that happens, it goes back around to idle. If it's not its target, it moves. And then here's the important thing, it then does another scan. And the reason I'm doing this is because if it's going to intersect with the mob that it couldn't see previously, it should then move into this section where if it has an attack target, I then see, is the mob healthy? As in, each mob will have a certain threshold where if it's below that threshold, it might go into a panicked state, in which case it'll try and run away. This block's terminating, which it probably shouldn't. It should probably have some other logic here, but that's fine for now. But if it's not panicked, it then does some defensive action. Like if it's got a shield, it can block or something. And then it comes up to here, and it says, is it in range of the target mob? If it's not, it moves and checks again. This is also connects to where if it is healthy, it just goes straight to check if it's in range. If it is, it will then attack, and then it checks to see if the mob it's attacked is defeated. If it's not, we go back and loop over this again. If it is, we do another scan, see if there are any more targets in the vicinity. I should probably actually connect this to, this should probably connect to this in reality back here, where if there isn't an attack target, there might not be an actual target. Oh no, hang on. Sorry. This was correct. The idea behind it is when a mob is defeated, it it will drop loot that needs to be looted. So that loot becomes the target position. So it's defeated, it scans. If there's no other targets, it will then go to the loot position and then loop back around to idle. Now, if it doesn't find any points of interest, it sees if it can scan back and forth like I had before, where it just scans, rotates, scans, rotates. If it hasn't done all the way around, it can rotate and scan again. If it has, though, I'm going to make this patience, be C, shouldn't it? Patience. Yeah, it's the wrong kind of patience. It'll have this stat which will tick down if it doesn't find points of interest, and if it goes below a certain threshold, it'll then leave the dungeon. But if it has patience left, it will do a wander. I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the actual logic here, but it's just going to sort of pick a random tile in front of it maybe, and then go there, and then repeat this process. Thinking about that, the patience stat, I should make the opposite, where there's sort of a satisfaction where defeating mobs and collecting loot increases the satisfaction meter, and then if that is above a certain threshold, it would then leave as well. So that's an addition I can make. And then I have this other entry point here, where if the mob itself gets attacked, it will break out of any of these loops and come to here. If it can see its target, then it joins into this attack loop here. If it can't, it'll then rotate and try and find it, and then do this. And the reason I've got it framed like this is because if a mob is going one direction and it crosses paths, but it doesn't spot something that can then attack it, that then needs to interrupt, because otherwise it'll just be killed without doing anything. So that's why I've got this little check loop. And then if we're in this attacking loop, if we're in combat and then we're attacked, it doesn't matter, because then we jump back to here and the target will be visible when we're in the attack cycle. We come around here. And this also adds range combat in, because if I'm checking if it's close enough to the target, all I have to do is, if it's a range thing, just say the attack range is very long. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. It wasn't a lot of stuff to do, but it is important sometimes to just get the ideas clear in your head, because now I can break this down into different logic chunks and have like the idle logic, the scan logic, the looting. I can have these as separate chunks in the code, and then I have a reference chart to go to decide when to activate certain things, and this should make it a lot tidier. Yeah, so that's where we end this month. Pretty odd month in total. What did I do? I did the I remade the textures and redid the mana. I can't remember what I started the month with. Oh, I changed the way the placement system worked. So, bit of an odd month. Hopefully we should start off the next month with implementing some of these things and building out the game more. So that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.